Hey guys, and welcome to another deep dive Evercade completion review. And a completion review is where I need to complete an Evercade game from start to finish. Doesn't matter how many load states I use, and it doesn't matter how many save states, just as long as I can complete the game before I do this review. And today's game that we're looking at reviewing comes from Purple Cart, number 8, the Toaplan Arcade 1 collection. We're looking at Snow Brothers, part of the 8-game collection. Let's get into it. Today we're heading into a flurry of retro chaos with one of the chillest and quirkiest and most underrated arcade gems of the 90s, Snow Brothers. Meet Nick and Tom, two heroic snowmen who aren't just cool, they're downright frozen. Their princess girlfriends have been kidnapped, of course, and now it's up to our Frosty heroes to take on waves of weird monsters, haunted towers, and freaky bosses armed with nothing but snowballs. Imagine Bubble Bobble chugging an energy drink, then hurling itself face first into a snowstorm. That's pretty much what Snow Brothers is. You freeze enemies into giant snowballs, roll them across the stage, and watch them mow down every creeper in their path like a snowy wrecking ball of justice. There's chaos, there's colours, there's that one level where you almost break the joystick, but it's all part of the charm. So grab your mittens, your arcade reflexes, and your best let's do this face, because we're diving deep to find out, does Snow Brothers still hold up today, or should it stay buried in the arcade avalanche of history? Let's suit up and snow down. As always, we'll be looking at the story, the sound, and the gameplay, and a little later on we'll be looking at my Evercade stats on how long it took me to complete Snow Brothers. But before we do all that, let's take a look at some facts and interesting gossip about Snow Brothers. So Snow Brothers may look like something Capcom whipped up during a sugar rush, tight controls, colourful sprites, and arcade charm for days, but it was actually created by Toaplan and released in 1990. Toaplan was born in 1984 in Japan, a phoenix rising from the ashes of a small but ambitious game studio called Crux. When Crux unexpectedly folded after a brief run, the core team of talented developers didn't throw in the towel or run for the hills. Nope. Instead, these game veterans doubled down on their passion for arcade gaming and formed something new. Something that would quietly become legendary in the shooter world. The name Toaplan literally breaks down as Toa, meaning East Asia, or sometimes interpreted as Eastern Asia, and Paran, simply plan, written in katakana, the Japanese script used for foreign loanwords. So the name basically means East Asia Plan. So this is not the flashiest or most mysterious name in the gaming biz. It's no Space Invader or Street Fighter vibe here, but Toaplan's identity was never about flashy branding or gimmicks. They let their games do the heavy lifting, building a reputation through tight gameplay, blistering action, and some of the most memorable shoot-'em-ups ever made. Their initial fame was built around Tiger Heli in 1985, a fast-paced helicopter shooter that set the tone for what was to come. Fast reflexes, precise controls, and relentless waves of enemies. It was the kind of arcade game where quarters vanished fast because you just couldn't stop playing it. Toaplan's legacy is most firmly rooted in the shoot-'em-up genre, often called shmups by fans, where players pilot ships or planes and blast their way through swarms of enemies and massive bosses. They created classics like Truckston, Zero Wing, and Batsagun, each game pushing the boundaries of design and technical skill in the 80s and early 90s arcade scene. Sadly, Toaplan's run did end in the mid-90s due to financial struggles, but their influence is still felt today, with spiritual successes and remakes keeping the flame very much alive. So while the name Toaplan might not ring bells for casual gamers, for shmup enthusiasts and retro arcade lovers, it's synonymous with quality, challenge, and pure arcade adrenaline. So when Toaplan suddenly dropped a platformer about two snowmen turning enemies into weaponized snowballs, everyone collectively went, wait, the bullet hell guys made this? But here's the twist, they nailed it. Snow Brothers was a total genre shift. And it worked. Smooth gameplay, creative level design, and just enough chaos to remind you it was still a Toaplan production underneath the snowflakes. This unexpected move added a unique gem to their legacy and gave retro fans a Frosty favourite for the ages. Toaplan officially went out of business around 1994 to 1995, but the exact timeline is a bit fuzzy because the company gradually wound down rather than abruptly closing their doors, but by the mid-90s, Toaplan had ceased producing new games under that name. The arcade market was becoming more competitive and expensive, and games were getting more complex and development costs were rising. Toaplan's niche, mainly fast-paced 2D shoot-'em-ups, was becoming more of a niche as players' tastes started shifting toward other genres and 3D graphics. They had limited transition to consoles, so unlike some other arcade developers who successfully transitioned into home console markets, Toaplan struggled to adapt. They mainly stayed focused on arcade titles and didn't have major success in emerging console market, limiting their revenue streams. Let's take a look at the story. The chilling tale of Snow Brothers from everyday dudes to frostbitten legends. Let's break the ice on this frosty fairy tale because the story of Snow Brothers just isn't arcade fluff. Oh no, it's a full-blown magical revenge rescue mission, starring two human guys who get turned into walking snowmen by an evil flame wizard with an attitude problem. Welcome to 1990, baby. Our heroes are Nick and Tom, just a couple of regular happy-go-lucky blokes who presumably enjoyed long walks on the beach and didn't expect to wake up cursed and covered in snow. That all changed when King Scorch, a fiery overlord with a personal vendetta against Joy, rolled into town. Not content with just burning everything to the ground, he decides to transform Nick and Tom into snowmen, kidnapped their girlfriends, Princess Terry and Princess Tanya, because, of course they're twins, and vanish into a towering fortress of doom. And how do Nick and Tom react? Do they wallow in self-pity? Do they cry frozen tears of defeat? Heck no. They look at each other dead in their cold button eyes and say, right, let's weaponize this snow. Armed with the power of rollable snowballs and an undenying thirst for justice and maybe romance, our Frosty brothers fight their way up a 50-level tower, tossing enemies around like snow-themed bowling pins. Let's go! And their mission? Save the princesses, dethrone the evil king, and maybe, just maybe, get their original bodies back. Now let's pause here. You might be thinking, wait, this is a cute arcade game. Why does the plot sound like a rejected Marvel movie? And that's a great question. But welcome to Snow Brothers, a game where you throw snowballs like they're tactical nukes. You get ambushed by monsters that look like rejected Halloween decorations, and you ride elevators, dodge bats, and fight bosses that include a sentient vampire head, a demon pumpkin, and a weird green lizard ogre duo, with exactly zero chill. Each level is more chaotic than the last, and the whole time you're doing it with no dialogue, no weapons, and, presumably, no pants. Snowmen don't wear pants. Please don't question this. But back to King Scorch. This guy is the ultimate mood killer. He's what happens when a fireplace becomes sentient and decides to ruin every holiday. Not only did he curse Nick and Tom, but he did it with style. According to the arcade lore, he imprisoned the princesses in magical bottles because nothing says villain and issues like decorative glassware prison cell. And here's the kicker. Snow Brothers doesn't just end when you beat the final boss. In classic arcade fashion, the reward isn't a fancy cutscene. It's the feeling that you justified the odds, melted a fire tyrant's ego, and brought winter to hell. So, as for the story, let's take a quick dot point look. Nick and Tom were humans. They got turned into snowmen by a fiery-obsessed villain. They said, cool, and rolled into battle. They fought monsters, bosses, and gravity itself, and they did it all to save the princesses and maybe Christmas. And they never once asked for help, backup, or even socks. Snow Brothers is ridiculous, charming, and pure arcade energy wrapped in a snowball, and its story as delightfully bonkers as its gameplay. It's not just another platformer, it's a frosty fairy tale where the cold never bothered them anyway. Get it? That's from Frozen. Let's take a look at the sound. Imagine you're stepping into the pixelated winter wonderland of Snow Brothers, a vibrant, colourful world where two little snowmen, Nick and Tom, are ready to pelt you with a blizzard of snowballs and cheesy arcade charm. But what really brings this frosty frenzy to life? The sound, of course. Right from the start, Snow Brothers delivers a soundtrack that's basically the musical equivalent of a sugar rush on a snow day. The catchy upbeat tunes combine chiptune bounces with a playful melody that'll get stuck in your head faster than a snowball stuck in your scarf. Seriously, you'll find yourself humming the main theme long after you've powered down the arcade cabinet. The music is pure 80s arcade joy. Think peppy, twinkling synths dancing alongside punchy bass lines and sprinkles of sparkling bells that evoke the feeling of crunching snow underfoot. It's the kind of soundtrack that somehow manages to be both energetic and cozy, like a cup of hot cocoa with extra marshmallows, but also the hype anthem for your next big boss fight. And then there's the sound effects. Every jump, snowball, throw, and enemy freeze comes with a satisfying plink, pow, or whoosh that's as tactile as wrapping your mittens around a fresh snowball. When you trap an enemy in snow, it's this squishy, crisp sound that's oddly gratifying. Like squeezing a snowball just before you launch it. The pop when they shatter, it's like a cherry on top, letting you know that you nailed it. The voice samples, like the occasional woohoo or yeah from the Snowman, add a cheeky personality to the game, giving Nick and Tom some much needed arcade swagger. It's like your two frosty heroes are hyping you up, edging you on to clear the next stage with style. But behind the scenes, the sound design was crafted by the talented team at Toaplan, who knew a thing or two about packing arcade games with addictive audio. The composer mixed crisp digital sounds with melodic hooks that don't just set the mood, they boost your gameplay adrenaline, making you want to pick up that joystick and start tossing snowballs all over again. In short, Snow Brothers' sound is like a perfectly timed snowball. It's playful, satisfying, and impossible to resist. It's a key reason the game remains a beloved classic, not just for its charming visuals and gameplay, but for the pure, joyous noise that keeps players coming back for more. The music for Snow Brothers was composed by Tatsuya Omura. He was one of the key sound designs and composers as Toaplan during their arcade heyday. Omura crafted catchy, upbeat chiptune soundtracks that perfectly matched the fast-paced and fun gameplay style of games like Snow Brothers. Omura is well known for his work on many classic Toaplan titles including Snow Brothers, Truxton, Zero Wing, and Flying Shark. His music is often praised for energetic melodies, memorable hooks, and that unmistakable arcade vibe that defined many 80s and early 90s shooters and platformers. Let's take a look at the gameplay. If you're looking for a game that's pure old-school arcade magic sprinkled with just the right amount of cleverness, Snow Brothers is your frosty ticket to Funtown. The core mechanic is delightfully simple. Your job is to hurl snowballs at baddies until they're wrapped up tighter than a Christmas present under a mountain of tinsel. Then, with a satisfying pop, you kick those icy packages off the screen and rack up points like you're on the holiday MVP. But hold on to your mittens, folks. This isn't just a mindless snowball fight. Timing and precision are your best friends here. Enemies don't just shuffle along politely. They come at you in wild, unpredictable waves, each with its own zany personalities. Some bounce around like they've had way too much hot cocoa, jittery and unpredictable, while others lumber forward like drunken polar bears who just can't find the ice bar. And just when you think you've got the hang of it, some nasties start chasing you down like you're in the last snow cone at summer camp, forcing you to duck, dodge, and think on your toes or get squashed like a snowball in a clothes dryer. Now here's where Snow Brothers really throws a snowball in the gears of ordinary shooters. Once you've trapped an enemy in a snowy coffin, you don't just stand there admiring your handiwork. Nope, you can roll that Frosty package and kick it at other enemies to unleash a dazzling chain reaction of icy destruction. Imagine a snowball bowling alley where one well-aimed toss sends a line of foes fumbling and tumbling like dominoes. It's a brilliant mix of strategy and chaos. Nail the timing just right and you can clear the entire screens, sending your score soaring higher than a Yeti on a trampoline. Speaking of scores, Snow Brothers knows how to make your inner completionist do a happy dance. Smash enough enemies, grab hidden bonuses, and watch your points climb faster than snowflakes in a blizzard. Rack up combos and that game practically throws confetti at you, while sparkling sound effects and explosive bursts of colour. It's like the game itself is cheering, "You're snow awesome." Get it? That was a dad joke. Controls, spot on. Tight, responsive, and intuitive. The kind of control that feels like an extension of your own mittened hands. You jump, throw, and dash through levels bursting with quirky monsters, tricky platforms, and enough ice and snow to give even a penguin frostbite. Every movement feels crisp and satisfying, which is exactly what you want when your life depends on tossing snowballs with pinpoint accuracy. And as you progress, the challenge ramps up like a snowstorm turning into a blizzard. New enemy types pop up, environmental hazards starts to throw curveballs, and surprise bosses show up to test your snow-throwing mettle. But don't worry, the difficulty curve is fair and addictively balanced, making Snow Brothers one of those arcade games you'll happily lose quarters to again and again and again and again and again and again. And here's the best part: if you're lucky enough to rope in a friend for some classic two-player co-op action, get ready for double the snowball chaos. Nothing says true friendship like teaming up to cover each other in snow, strategizing on the fly, and sending frozen foes flying off the screen together. It's cooperative mayhem at its best, a snowball fight that never gets old. At first, the enemies in Snow Brothers are just your run-of-the-mill creepy cute goons. You know, kind of like the monsters you'd expect to see in a kid's snow globe. But once you start duking it out with the bosses, the game transforms into a full-blown arcade fever dream that will have you questioning reality and maybe your sanity. You'll come face to face with some seriously bizarre and unforgettable boss designs. There's also the twin ogre things with horns and very punchable faces. These two muscle-bound brutes are clearly siblings who never got along but teamed up anyway, and their faces scream, "I'm about to punch you!" And honestly, you're right there with them. They bash, stomp, and grunt their way through their attack patterns, providing a tough but satisfying challenge to melt your icy snow. And eventually, King Scorch himself, the final boss, a hulking, flaming beast who looks like he just stepped out of a volcano-themed nightmare. He's got that "I'm 100% done with your snowy heroics" attitude, and his blazing attacks mean business. His fiery aura and intimidating roar make you feel like you're about to get roasted, and not in a fun campfire way. Each boss has their own quirky, unique attack patterns that force you to learn their moves, dodge their wild swings, and strike at just the right moment. Plus, their weird laughs and exaggerated animations feel like the concept artists were handed a box of crowns and told, "Go nuts." The result? A parade of unforgettable bosses that keeps the tension high and the fun off the charts. Prepare yourself, these bosses are as much part of the charm of Snow Brothers as the snowball fights themselves. You'll be scratching your head, laughing, and yelling at the screen all at the same time, and that's exactly the kind of madness you want in a great arcade game. Now, I paid $44.99 for this cart, but because this has 8 games on it, we can't say that I paid that for just this Snow Brothers. We have to say that I paid $5.62, meaning for my $10 per hour ratio, for me to complete this game and get my money's worth, I'll need to complete it in 34 minutes. And I can successfully say I achieved this, completing the game in 1 hour and 54 minutes, meaning it's a massive bargain in my books. I had a play count of 2, a load count of 22, and a save count of 17. Yes, I'm not that good at this game. And now it's time for my review on Snow Brothers. Let's build this snowman. I give the story a 4 out of 10. Honestly, the story in Snow Brothers is pretty silly, and at first, downright confusing. I mean, here I am controlling two snowmen named Nick and Tom, chucking snowballs at hordes of monsters, but why? It felt like I accidentally walked into the world's weirdest snowball fight and no one bothered to explain the rules. There's no opening scene, no briefing, not even a sign that says, hey, here's what's going on. It's just snowball fight madness. Turns out, if you do some digging, because the game certainly won't tell you, Nick and Tom are actually trying to rescue a princess kidnapped by King Scorch, a fiery villain who apparently hates winter and thinks turning everyone into monsters is a good look. Kind of like one grumpy neighbour who hates holidays and decorates their yard with fake flames instead of festive lights. Honestly, King Scorch sounds like he just skipped the memo on how to be a villain with style. But here's the thing, the game never bothers to explain any of this. There's no cutscenes, no plot twists, no heartfelt speeches. It's like a silent movie except the actors are snowmen and the villains are a floating vampire head and a giant wizard pumpkin. Yes, you heard that right. A giant pumpkin that is also a wizard. It honestly feels a bit like the story was scribbled down on the back of a napkin during a snowstorm-themed party, and the designers just said, yeah, that's good enough. Let's get back to the snowball fights. And honestly, that's part of the charm. Sometimes you just want to control a snowman, throw some snowballs at crazy monsters, and not have to worry about messy plot details. Kind of like how you eat instant noodles, quick, simple, and oddly satisfying without needing a Michelin star story. You don't ask instant noodles for a backstory, you just enjoy the warm, comforting chaos. If Snow Brothers were a movie, it'd be one of those campy 80s flicks that you watch with your friends on a lazy weekend, full of wild characters, goofy villains, and a plot so thin it's almost invisible. It's not trying to win any Oscars for storytelling, it just wants you to have fun fighting snowballs and laughing at the absurdity of it all. So if you're looking for a deep, epic narrative, this isn't it. But if you want a goofy, light-hearted romp where the story barely gets in the way of the fun, Snow Brothers has you covered in snow. God damn it, another dad joke. Let's take a look at the sound. I give the sound of Snow Brothers a 6 out of 10. The music in this game is delightfully catchy, the kind of upbeat, lively tunes that just make you want to smile and keep on playing. From the moment the first cheerful notes kick in, you find yourself tapping your foot, nodding along, or even grinning like a kid who's just discovered the best snowball fight ever. It's a soundtrack that perfectly captures the game's joyful, silly spirit. There's a light-hearted energy in every track, like a cartoon theme song that never lets the mood drop. The music is bright and playful, and it keeps things feeling fresh and fun no matter how many monsters are chasing you down or how bizarre the bosses get, and trust me, they get pretty bizarre. Instead of making the game feel intense or scary, the tunes turn it into a kind of wacky party where the main event is flinging snowballs and laughing at the madness. The sound effects fit right in with this vibe also. That satisfying ping when your snowball connects and that crisp crunch of enemies getting frozen in ice. And the goofy, almost gleefully laughs of the bosses all add personality and keep the action lively. It's like the game's sound design is nudging you saying, hey, please don't take us too seriously, just have a bit of fun. While it's not a grand sweeping orchestral score or anything you'd find in a blockbuster movie, the soundtrack does exactly what it needs to do. It lifts your mood and keeps the energy high. The music is infectious, upbeat, and fun, and it's basically impossible to play Snow Brothers without cracking a smile. Whether you're battling Pumpkin Wizard or Twin Ogres with punchable faces, the sound always has your back, making sure you're having a good time every step of the way. Let's take a look at the gameplay. I give the gameplay of Snow Brothers an 8 out of 10. Let me tell you, this game is a proper challenge, and I died more times than I'd like to admit, but here's the thing, I didn't even mind. Dying became part of the fun like a quirky snowball slapstick routine where I was the star who kept getting bonked on the head. It's that kind of fail, learn, and try again vibe that kept me hooked, because every time I got knocked out, I was itching to jump back in and prove I was tougher than the enemies. The controls are slick and responsive, which is a lifesaver when you're dodging a horde of weird enemies, from floating vampire heads to twin ogres and faces just begging for a punch. Timing your snowball throws is like choreographing a bizarre winter dance, and if you mess up, well, you end up flat on your snowy backside. But when you nail it, oh man, it's as satisfying as landing a perfect snowball smack right on a friend's nose, minus the cold retaliation. The difficulty hits the sweet spot, tough enough to make you feel like a heroic snow warrior, but fair enough that each death feels like a lesson, not a punishment. You get better, you learn the enemy patterns, and every victory feels like a small Frosty triumph. Honestly, the chaos, the weird bosses, and the endless snowball flinging made the whole experience so enjoyable that losing never felt like a drag. It was more like, alright, bring it on, and I laughed at the craziness and kept coming back for more snowy madness. One thing that really stuck with me is I wish I could experience this as a two-player game. Imagine teaming up with a mate to take down those ridiculous bosses together, coordinating snowball attacks, covering each other's backs and probably blaming each other with one of you inevitably gets turned into a monster. So anyone out there keen to come over and help me tackle those Frosty friends, and I promise I'm only mildly competitive and only slightly terrible at co-op games. Anyone? Anyone? Overall, I'd rate Snow Brothers a solid 6 out of 10. The gameplay is definitely the star of the show. It's fast-paced, goofy, and incredibly addictive. You'll find yourself chucking snowballs, dodging bizarre enemies, and laughing at the sheer madness of it all. It's the kind of fun that makes you want to keep playing even when you're getting pummeled by twin ogres, because the fun factor is through the roof. The sound and story, well, they add the charm but don't exactly steal the spotlight. The story is goofy and almost non-existent unless you dig for it, and the soundtrack is catchy enough to get stuck in your head, but not the kind of music you'd put on a playlist. Still, they fit perfectly with the game's light-hearted vibe. Now here's the kicker. The score would have been higher if I had the chance to play it as the two-player co-op it was clearly designed for. Because honestly, everything's better with a mate, especially flinging snowballs at weird monsters and shouting, "Watch out for the pumpkin," together. Imagine the chaos and the laughs when you and a friend try to coordinate attacks, cover each other's backs, and inevitably blame each other when one of you ends up frozen solid. So yeah, maybe someday I'll dust off Snow Brothers again for a proper co-op session, and if anyone else is keen to join, then hey, you guys know where to find me. Just be warned, I'm competitive enough to keep it fun, but not so much that I won't laugh when we both end up buried under a mountain of snowballs. Thank you so much for watching another deep dive Evercade completion review. Please remember to give me a like, subscribe, and comment down below because I love reading your guys' comments and understanding why you enjoyed Snow Brothers so much. Especially comment if you played Snow Brothers co-op because that is something I'm yet to do. As for that, we will see you next time on another episode of The Odd Socks, and until then, stay odd and stay awesome. See you guys.
Woo!